lighting of the elements is what really establishes their position within the scene. In other words, adding the third dimension. And sometimes creating those highlights and shadows and stuff requires specialized masks. A good case in point would be way up here, the wires on the lamps in the Toys R Us building. These wires are going all over different areas, so their highlights and shadows have to fall in different areas. Something that a layer style cannot do because of the fact that it only works with something uniformly, whereas here the wires are not uniform. They're just bending in different areas and causing shadows and stuff in different places. So let's see how a specialized mask is going to work. What I've done here is I've created this pole. Now right off the bat we can see that there's a problem that a layer style won't be able to tackle. And that is that there are 3 light sources. There's a blue tone coming from above, a greenish hue coming from the center, and then a orangey kind of a glow coming from down below. So right there we're dealing with 3 colors, and the layer styles can only handle 2 colors. And also these particular light sources are in very specific places, which is another little problem for our wire. So let's go in there and create a wire. Now I've got a path here, which I'm going to select that path. I'm going to create a layer right here above the pole, and I'm going to call it the wire. And I'm going to get a color that I'm going to use for this wire. Let's just say we choose a nice dark gray like that. And I get my brush tool, and I'm going to set it to a hard edge, make it much smaller. Let's see, about that size. That's a good size. Okay, and then I'm going to make sure that the brush is set to a nice solid line. There it is. So now that I have all that in that layer of the wire right there, I'm going to take that path and stroke it with the paintbrush. So there's our wire. I'm going to take away the path. And there's our wire. Now, going behind the pole, we'll handle that at the end. But right now, what we have to do is shade it so it looks like it's being hit by these 3 light sources, the blue, the green, and the orange. Now, they're going to fall in very specific spots. We're going to see that the blue is going to hit it up here, and it's probably going to hit it in this area here, and right around here, and a little bit down here. The green is going to hit it right here, dead center there, right here, right there, and there, because it's coming straight on. And then the orange that's coming from below is going to hit it in this area, down here, there, not really up here. Why? Because a pole is going to block it. But we might pick a little bit of it right in there. So here's where we have to get very specific with our mask as to where we're going to add these specific tones. So here's where we're going to create our mask. We're going to do it with alpha channels and the use of that often neglected tool, calculations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the actual shape of the wires into a selection by command clicking on it, and I'm going to save it as a selection. So I go in there and say save selection, and I'm going to call this wire. I'm going to save it again. I'm going to call it edge. Now we can deselect it. So when we go to our channels, we see that there's the wire and there's the edge. They look exactly the same because they are the same selection. The edge is that roundness. It's what's going to make this wire look round, kind of like the edges on the pole that have that rounded look to them because they're soft. So to get that effect, I'm going to take the channel that's called edge and I'm going to blur it. Give it a little Gaussian blur, in which we're going to soften it up just enough so that it gives me that nice little rounded edge. I'm going to click OK. So we have that. So what's going to happen now is I want to see the other channel on top of it. So I'm going to turn both of them on. Now it's a little hard to see the difference between these, so I'm going to double click on it just to change the color that I'm using to see it to a blue and click OK. And now I can see that little haze, which is where these two are overlapping. What I want to create now is the mask for the blue light coming from above, which means we're going to see it right in this area in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this layer of the edge and move it down a little bit. Got my move tool and I'm going to hit my cursor keys pointing down. I'm going to just go straight down. And you see it right there? That's where they're overlapping. There's that little edge right there. And we see it here. We see it there. And it's straight above. So that's good. So I'm just going straight down. So now what I need is a mask or a channel that's going to expose that area right there. And like I did in the other movies about calculations, it's explaining the same thing. Here we go. We go into calculations, and I'm going to say subtract the wire from the edge, and you see that I am exposing those top edges of my wire right in there. So I send the information over to a new channel, click OK. I'm now going to go back to the edge and see the wire again, and this time I want to expose for that orange down below. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it straight up, like that. But that's going to be the area for the orange that's coming from down below. Again, I go to calculations, and I have to subtract, and I say send it to a new channel, and there it is. Now I can name these. Let's do that. Let's name this the blue. We'll name this orange. And now we're going to do the green. So I go back to the edge again, and I look at the wire, and what I'm going to do with the edge this time is I'm going to move it to the right. So I'm exposing this side right here, just through there like that. That looks good, and I'm going to move it down. See right here in this edge, I'm getting a little more of exposure right through there of where my green is going to be, because it's not exactly straight on. It's a little bit up to the top, so we got this little edge going right through there like that. So let's just move it up so we have just enough exposed and over, about like that. That looks good. Do the calculations again, and we can see what we're getting. That looks good. Click OK, and we'll call that one green. Now that we have all the channels, we can go back to our RGB, and we can start to add all these effects to our wire. Now they're going to be done in layers. So we're going to create a layer on top of this, and we're going to call this one the blue. So I can pick the blue right from here, right there. I have the same blue. In fact, if I want to make it a little stronger, I could just go into the color picker and just make it a little bluer. And in that blue layer, I'm going to load that channel that we just created called blue. And I'm going to load that channel. It's exposing that area. And if you really want to see what you're doing, you might want to just turn off the marching ants. So, with my paintbrush, this time I'm going to get a soft edge brush. I'm going to make it very soft and much bigger. I'm going to bring down the opacity because I want to have a little more control for this thing. I'm going to bring it down to about 51%. And through that mask, in that one layer, and make sure we're in it, I'm going to start to paint my blue right up in there. And I'm going to see some of it right in here. And I'm going to see some of it right in there. And maybe just a touch right in there. See how subtle they are? Very subtle. Might want to add a little more up there because of the fact that that's closer to the light source. So now I'm going to pick up the green. Right there, there's my green, and I'll create another layer, which I'll call green, and make sure I'm in that channel that's for the green, and there it's loaded. Again, I'm going to hide the marching ants just so I can really see what I'm doing, and in that layer for green, I'm going to get my paintbrush and start to add the green, which we can see that it's pretty much in this area right here. Now, that green just doesn't quite look right, so let's undo that. And pick a really good green. Let's get that green, and let's say we go with a little lighter, about like that. That looks good. So I'm going to throw a little green right through here, and it's going to pick some of it up right in there, and we're going to pick up some right in this area here, and that's closer, so I got a little stronger there, and maybe just a tad right in there. And finally, we have the orange. So I'm going to get one more layer, which we'll call orange. And we'll pick an orange. Let's pick it right from here this time. So go in here and we'll pick up a nice orange like that. And make sure we have that channel selected. So we'll go in there and turn that into a selection. And we'll go in there and hide the marching ants. And we'll go in there and paint it. Right in there we want some orange. We want some orange in here. We're going to get rid of some of that in a little while. A little orange in there. And a lot of orange in here because of the fact that that's real close to the light source. Now, you notice how I don't have to be that careful because of the fact that it's all going through a mask. So here we have the proper lighting now. So now what we have to do is we have to add some additional masks, but these are now layer masks that we're going to apply so that the wire does look like it is in fact wrapping around this pole. So I'm going to go back to my layers, and the wire right there is going to get a mask. Now, something was selected, so let's undo that. Whenever something happens, it's not Photoshop making its own judgments. No, I never deselected it. So when I created a mask, it automatically made a mask based on the selection. So we got to make sure that we have nothing selected. So we'll go up there and say deselect. So now when I make a mask, there you see nothing happened. I have a pure white mask. In that white mask, using black at 100%, I'm going to paint right inside here. Now, what I want to do is I want to paint only inside there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the pole a selection by command-clicking on it. And I'm in the mask. So when I paint with black, you notice that the wire disappeared. It now looks like it's going in back there, right? So now, the orange is going to need a mask. So I'm going to give it a mask. I'm going to select that pole again and erase that part right there. Don't want that part. Take that away. And now I'm going to throw a little black into this area here, but I'm going to go straight up and down. See, because I just want it to look like the pole is casting a shadow right on there, which we have to consider that shadow, which we'll do that last. So there we see that now the orange is being blocked just the way you want it. And then the blue needs a mask right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a mask, select the pole, and hide it right in that area right there. So there, now we're starting to get the full lighting of our pole. And the last thing that we need is that shadow being cast by this pole because of the fact we have this strong light source right there and a strong light source here. So we have a shadow of the pole on the wire. And then here, we need a shadow of the wire on the pole. So first, the shadow on the wire. So we got the wire here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layer on top of it. And in that layer, I'm going to throw some black. So with a nice soft brush, I'm going to just throw some black right in there like that. I'm going to clip it with the wire so I see it only inside there and bring down the opacity just a little. So there we have this little shadow being cast by the pole on the wire. Now, the wire has to cast a shadow itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the shadow and I'm going to make it real easy. I'm just going to double click on this to bring up a layer style for the wire, give it a drop shadow. There's my drop shadow, which I'm going to increase the distance a bit like that. Click OK. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate that shadow from the layer by going into Layer Styles, Create Layer. Okay, there it is. There's the drop shadow. I'm going to take the drop shadow and clip it to the pole. So now I see it only inside the pole. And then I'm going to move it around a little bit just so that I can get it just the angle that I want. Let's get that shadow. That's what we want to move. And we'll just move it just to where we want it, right about like that. And that little piece that came up, no problem. We could just erase that right out. And there we see that we have this wire strung over the pole with the proper lighting that matches all the rest of the lighting in the scene.